It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Your computer, at its core, is basically just an overgrown calculator. But how exactly does it go from a simple box crunching basic numbers to, well, a machine capable of playing insanely rich video games, firing off complex data packets across the globe, or even rendering the millions of beautiful pixels you're looking at right now? So, what is your computer actually doing in there? Okay, let's dive into this. To really answer that question, we need to temporarily strip away all the sleek hardware and those complex modern user interfaces. We need to look at the absolute bare metal of the machine. In this explainer, we're going to hit four main areas: the bare metal, the fetch-decode-execute cycle, scaling up the language, and finally, speed and modern security. I promise you, by understanding one simple, slightly magical ticking clock, you're going to grasp the very core foundation of computer science. All right, part one, the bare metal. Let's build a simplified computer right now. If you crack open your phone or your PC, underneath all the different devices that make it work, you're going to find a heart. And driving that heart is a clock. Now, for our analogy, imagine this clock is a bit magic. Every single tick drives a step forward. Literally, every single action your computer takes relies entirely on this rhythmic ticking. That heart I just mentioned, that's the CPU, the central processing unit. And what's absolutely incredible is how simple the core of this CPU actually is. Inside it, we're using 3 registers. Registers are really just tiny bits of insanely fast storage where the CPU holds the specific values it's working on right this exact second. We need 1 register to keep track of where we are in our cycle, 1 to load our instructions into, and finally an accumulator, which is honestly just a fancy word for the place where we actually do our math. Now, the final piece of bare metal we need is a place to keep our list of instructions and a place to drop the answers we calculate. That's RAM, or random access memory. We call it random access because it simply doesn't matter when or in what order the info is read or written. For our exercise today, instead of using messy binary code, we're just going to keep the instructions loaded in our RAM entirely human-readable. Okay, part 2. Fetch, decode, execute. This is the core dance. Let's set a rhythmic pace here. Imagine snapping your fingers to a steady beat. Tick, tick, tick. With every tick of our clock, the processor repeats a loop. In fact, this one specific sequence is physically built into the processor to just run continuously. Let's break down a single slow-motion loop. It's 3 simple steps. Step 1 is fetch. Our program counter starts at 0. So on that first tick, the CPU goes to address 0 in the memory, fetches the instruction sitting there, and drops it into the instruction register. Step 2 is decode. The CPU looks at what it just grabbed. Every instruction has 2 parts, a command and a memory address. Let's say it decodes the command load and the address 6. Step 3 is execute. The CPU actually does the thing. It heads over to address 6, grabs the value sitting there, let's just say it's the number 1, and loads it directly into the accumulator. Tick. The beat continues. Fetch. We grab the next instruction. Decode. This time the instruction says add and points us to address 7. Execute. The CPU goes to address 7, finds a value there, which happens to be another 1, and adds it to what's already sitting inside our accumulator. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. Boom! Our accumulator now holds the number 2. And there it is, we've just done computation. But hey, doing the math is only half the battle, right? We gotta save our work to keep going. So next time the clock ticks, we fetch and decode a brand new command, store. The CPU executes this by taking that number 2 from the accumulator and writing it back into RAM at address 6. It literally overwrites the old number 1 that was sitting there. Finally, we fetch and decode an instruction called jump. This tells the CPU to change its program counter back to address 1. We execute the jump, and just like that, we are right back at the beginning of our addition loop. And this brings us to a massive takeaway from our source material. The ability to jump, to loop, and to build instructions recursively is one of the foundations of computer science. Without that jump command, a computer just runs down a list and stops, dead in its tracks. But with the ability to loop back and use the new numbers it just calculated, like turning our 1 into a 2 and then into a 3, this simple repeating loop turns a static machine into a recursive counting engine. It's just going to keep ticking, fetching, decoding, and executing until the number gets so huge the memory address can't even hold it anymore. Moving on to part 3, scaling up the language. Bridging the gap between that core dance and a complex program requires language. Now, I just explained all this using English words like load and jump, but remember, at the bare metal level, these instructions are actually encoded in raw binary data, base 2 zeros and ones. Manually programming a computer by writing out millions of zeros and ones is incredibly fiddly. It's completely unreadable for humans, and let's be honest, highly prone to error. To make things a bit easier, we convert that base 2 binary into base 16 hexadecimal, known as machine code. But even then, it's pristine, messy logic that's super difficult to code and debug. So humans created an intermediary step called assembly language. It uses symbols and is a bit more readable, but it's still painfully close to the bare metal. Contrast that with high-level languages. Here, you use human-readable variables and functions. You don't have to worry about exactly which memory address a number is stored in. The language handles all that memory reading and writing automatically, letting you focus entirely on the actual logic of what you want the computer to do. And get this, here's a mind-boggling fact from the source to put that into perspective. The original Prince of Persia game was completely programmed in assembly. No way, right? Think about how painstaking that must have been. The programmer had to figure out every single pixel of animation and encode it almost directly to the computer, constantly juggling exactly where in the RAM every single piece of data was sitting. Thankfully, we really don't do that today. Today, you just write code in a high-level language, like making a variable x and writing a function to increment it. Then, you pass that code to a program called a compiler. The compiler does all the heavy lifting, translating your human-readable concepts down into the exact machine code instructions required by a specific CPU. Want to take your program and run it on a Mac instead of a PC? Easy. You just compile it again for that specific CPU's architecture. Which leads us to part 4, speed and modern security. Because you might be wondering, okay, I get how a loop adds numbers recursively, but how does that translate into something as complex as decompressing the video stream you're watching right now? How does simple counting translate into art? The answer to that is speed, literally billions. When we were walking through our mental models, snapping our fingers, we were executing maybe one instruction every couple of seconds on a single thread. But a modern CPU, it executes billions of instructions per second. That is what gigahertz actually means. And it does this simultaneously across multiple threads. It's doing that exact same simple fetch-decode-execute loop, just so unfathomably fast that millions of pixels can change colors dozens of times a second to create a moving picture. But of course, all this power brings up a critical modern reality. Programming complex instructions at these speeds is hard, and it introduces human error. And human error introduces massive security vulnerabilities. We literally rely on these billions of calculations to protect our digital lives. If you're reusing similar passwords across different sites, maybe just tweaking a number or adding the site's name, you are leaving the door wide open. One data breach and malicious actors can use that massive computing power to instantly guess your reused passwords. This is where we actually use practical computer logic to protect ourselves, specifically with password managers like Dashlane, which our source highlights. A password manager basically uses the computer's flawless memory to do what human memory just can't. It generates completely unique 20-character symbol-filled passwords for every single site. It stores them securely, autofills them automatically into your browser, whether that's Chrome, Safari, whatever, and syncs across your Windows, Mac, iPhone, and Android. It's essentially using perfect automated fetch-execute loops to take human error entirely out of your security setup. And here's the truly fascinating part about modern zero-knowledge architecture. Even though all this incredibly sensitive data is syncing to the cloud, the encryption ensures that the provider themselves, the company hosting the data, never actually knows what your passwords are. Because of how the data is encrypted locally on your CPU before it's ever sent over the internet, they literally cannot find them out. It's a perfect real-world example of using strict computational logic to protect data. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this thought. We've stripped away the screen, this sleek UI, the fancy graphics, and what did we find? A simple, slightly magical ticking clock. We've seen how fetching an instruction, decoding it, and executing it can scale up from basic addition to compiling entire languages, all the way to securing our digital lives with zero-knowledge architecture. Every single thing a computer does boils down to this fundamental cycle. So at billions of loops a second, what will you program your clock to build?